Blush Studio. My name is Katrina Crouch. I am the artist and educator behind Blush Design and this YouTube channel. Today I'm really excited to share with you kind of a slightly different format of video. So one thing that I do frequently is I pop onto my Instagram and I do live videos sharing just like a little art tip or sometimes, like a full tutorial. But again, the content is really good and I think that it's worth saving, which is why we're going to dive into that right now. All right guys, how's that? Bring this in a little bit closer. I will grab a pencil. All right, if you're new to our lives, I usually try and pause for questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the comment section and I'll kind of answer them all together as I have a chance to stop because I can't see the screen and paint at the same time. I do have up on my Pinterest page right now, pulled up, I just searched poppies, and so I have a bunch of reference photos. I'm going with kind of that traditional red poppy, but I'm a firm believer in the power of a good reference photo, even for kind of looser styles like this. For the paper, I am using Strathmore, For paper, I'm using Strathmore's 300 series watercolor paper, an HB pencil, and I'm not sure what brush yet. Probably something bigger. Usually when I'm doing something looser, I want a bigger brush. So I'm thinking probably 10 or 8, but we'll see how this goes. I'm going to just start off with a quick sketch. I'm thinking, let's just play around with something tall up here, pointed in this direction, center of the flower. Something a little more from the side here, pointing the other direction. Something a little more bullseye-y, maybe point it up now. I don't like that these two are going kind of in the same direction, so let's switch that a little bit. And then let's get these stems kind of figured out. And do some little, poppies have those cute little kind of pods that they're in before they bloom. All right, so let's play around with that. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me show you real quickly. I do, for my loose stuff, I do just a very light sketch, mostly to figure out, okay, like general placement of flowers, what direction they're going to be facing, so that I don't have to think too much while I'm painting. Loose watercolor painting is not my natural forte, so anything that I can do to make that process easier, I'm gonna do. Okay, so for this classic red, I think I'm gonna start with just some cadmium red. It's nice and bright and has a warm undertone. And then I'm going to mix some of it with, so I'm going to have some of it just be the pure cadmium red. I'm going to mix some of it with maybe Alizarin Crimson. I don't know, how do I want to deepen that a little bit? I think I'm going to mix some of it with maybe a little ultramarine, just to kind of tone that warmth down. So I like to have a couple of different shades within the same color. And then to lighten it a little bit, let's bring some more down. Oh, what should we do? Lemon yellow? Yeah, I think I'm gonna do lemon yellow. I'm going to pull out just some regular Ultramarine Blue, as well as some Sap Green. I'll be pulling in, since I already have the cadmium, I'm going to pull in to desaturate the Sap Green. I'm going to pull in that red for our stems and stuff, just to kind of keep things nice and consistent. It's a nice warm green without being too bright. Okay, I think we're just gonna play with that for now. I'm gonna pull some more of this out just because I have a feeling I need more of that to play with later. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with, I'm gonna start with a 10. So this is a size 10 round watercolor brush, and I'm using the Princeton Neptune series. But I mean, you could use the other brush. If I didn't have these watercolor brushes, I'd use the number 11 Artify that I use to mix the paint with. So let's pull in, let's just go straight in with our regular cadmium to start. I think I want this sky to be nice and light, as though he's kind of in the background. Got lots of water on my brush. So that's looking a little too pink to me, so I'm gonna warm up this space. And then just do the next one. All right, while that is still wet, I'm gonna go in with our lemon yellow. Just kind of tap some of this in, just to warm it up a little bit. But I also want to play with this more purpley tone, kind of towards the center. Just see what that does. All right, let's see. Poppies have these wide, super wide petals, so we're gonna make sure we're playing that up. Okay, let's move on to the next one before I get too carried away. I think I'm being a little too light. Let's... So I'm using mostly a combo of cadmium red and lemon yellow. But if you ever wonder what colors I'm using, if I don't mention it, I do have my palettes listed, my full palette listed on my, any of my watercolor tutorials are on my blog. Okay, let's see. So this one, and I am working off of photos that I just found on Pinterest. Nothing super special. I kind of wish I'd played more with overlapping. I kind of think I want to. Do I have a spare piece of paper? Out. No. Oh well. Okay, I'm just gonna apply more of this color in here to let that deepen up a bit. And then I don't love how this is getting really, really dark. I like to have my centers dark, but I don't like it to be too dark on the outside. I like that to fade a little bit more. I'm just picking it up, cleaning off my brush, and going back in. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna add some lighter petals back here, but I went a little bit darker in, which is kind of my default. Let's see, so that one's 2. Let's find another one. One of the keys that I find with more of this looser style is to have negative space between your petals, since you don't have kind of the definition that comes with more realistic styles or like an outline or anything like that. Having that negative space here helps define the difference between these two petals. And then of course keeping, you know, the value different. So like this one is in front, so it's going to be a little bit darker than this one that's behind. Let's warm that up a bit. And then, okay, so this petal starts here, comes down. And to get that wide section, I just push down harder on my brush. I'm not afraid to wiggle a little bit on the side and then release as it kind of goes in here. Okay, in a second I'll pause for questions. If you have anything, feel free to throw that into the comment section. Okay, let's see. So this one comes out from behind here. Oop. Oh, excuse me. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna stop there with that one for now. I am gonna go in, pull in some of this yellow, the same yellow we've been working in, just kind of add it in different places and let it kind of bleed in. Just because I think it's a little more visually interesting. I don't love this section where it was really stark. I like it to be a little bit more elegant, for lack of a better word, a little bit more, I don't know, integrated rather than just looking like I kind of dropped a bunch of yellow paint on it. Okay, so far I like that one best. I was following the reference photo much more closely with that one, so no surprise there. Okay, now to lighten this petal. And I didn't warm up, which I usually don't recommend. Okay, let's see. And then second one. I like this to be a little softer. I'm just going to take, this is a very wet brush, or not very wet, it's a damp brush, but with no pigment on it. I'm just going to soften this edge so it's not quite so harsh. Alright, well, guess we'll keep going. I'm not loving where this is going right now, so I think I might play around with a couple different things. Let's pull in some more of this red, the ultramarine. Figure out where those centers are going to go. And now for our stems. So poppies have a very, it's like a hairy stem. So we're just going to play that up a little bit. And then I'm going to go in with just water, pull the green down and let it kind of fade out. And then I'm going to go a little lighter on this one that's a little further back. I think that I want this one in the front, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Just give it the emphasis that it needs to translate that it's the one in the front, and it's going to have slightly more texture. I think I'm going to add a little bit of the Ultramarine Blue that we've been using. It's nice and bright, but it's also, it'll help to kind of darken things a little bit. All right, now for those little pods. I kind of like to bend down, but I'm going to do this one just to the side. A bit of blue at the base. And a little bit of this red here at the front. Okay, I'm going to give it another minute or so, and then I'm going to answer some questions. So if you have something, again, feel free to pop that in. I know that if you watch this, if you're watching the whole thing, I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but I know a lot of people kind of jump into these lives late. So I don't want to forget anybody. I'm going to curve this one down. So after I finish this guy, I will jump into that comment section and see what we've got. I don't want this section to be right in the center. I don't want it to look like it's been, I don't know, it's too much of a bullseye really. Too much blue. All right, and let's pull, so it's coming straight from here. Oops, I forgot questions. Emily, any tips on keeping a steady hand to draw and paint straight stems? Practice. I'm not great at it. A lot of times people will, like, one thing that I've found helps like students is kind of like practicing the line in the air first and then, you know, then applying it to the paper. But it's one of those things that comes with practice, which I know like nobody likes to hear. Having your hand supported on a surface helps a lot. So if you're like doing something, like if I was to do something over here, I'd put my pinky down and then go over and make sure that like my elbow was supported. So making sure that there's support elsewhere on your, you know, like on your arm, so you're not just like floating out in the middle of nowhere. But really that's one of those things that that's more muscle memory. So it comes with practice rather than, you know, like, I mean, like I say, kind of with my flower drawing challenge, it's not like a take this pill and, you know, like it totally works. It's even tricks that help, you have to practice them a lot. My husband is escaping this house. I think he's having lunch on the deck. Okay. I'm liking it a little bit better. I'm going to add another petal in the back here. Just add a little bit more depth because I feel like this has some depth, this has some depth, and this one is just like flat. And maybe see that this goes behind here. And then we'll add one to here as well. So anyway, sorry Emily, I kind of ended. There are things that you can do to help, but the biggest thing is really like if you're having trouble keeping your hand steady, it's more just because those muscles, those small muscles in your hand aren't necessarily strong enough yet. Like continue to practice it. It's one of those things that like everybody kind of struggles with. I still, you know, I mean, like even somebody who exercises regularly, some exercises are just going to be more challenging. And, you know, like no matter what stage you're in. And so like, yeah, having a steady hand is just kind of always one of those things that can be really tricky. It affects your line quality a lot. And that was something that even my advanced class in college, I remember we were talking about it, like, you know, like your line quality here fell apart. Like, how can we, like, that's really like what's affecting this composition more than anything else. So you need to go back in and fix that, you know, and that was when like we'd all been doing this for years and years. So unfortunately it is one of those things that you kind of just have to play around with and keep working on. But the nice thing is it's a skill that develops pretty quickly. You know, like you can go from like being totally lost and like not being able to support your pencil to, you know, like being okay. So I wish that there was something like a little bit more encouraging that I could say, like, you know, do finger push-ups or something. But this isn't piano and it doesn't work like that. But kind of like a piano player, you know, like certain fingers are just weaker. And like they'll have, I remember I didn't take piano because I'm not musical at all. But I remember in the music class I had to take, the teacher was talking about how like her students have to do exercises like this. And the ring finger is always like the weakest, so they'll have to like keep doing exercises and stuff to strengthen that. So anyway, kind of same idea. I don't have any exercises necessarily that you can do, but the nice thing is learning different positions that are helpful. For me, going this way is a lot easier than going like this way. So I would rather turn my paper up, you know, like upside down or around in order to get that clean, smooth line. And I'm willing to do that. Okay, so I'm mixing up a little bit more of this ultramarine. I'm going to pull in the cadmium red again. Mix those two together. And around until I have kind of this nice medium purple. I'm trying not to use my beloved Daniel Smiths today. Can you tell? I'm like playing around with my Winsor & Newton colors today. And I'm just gonna allow that to get nice and deep. So it's a nice deep purple. I didn't really want to do black today. That was a little bit harsh for kind of what I'm going for with this. What does poppy greenery look like? I don't really see any around or close to the flowers, so we're just going to ignore that. I think I am going to have this one, this little pod though, further develop, so I'm going to stick out a little bit of, like it's just about ready to bloom, just to add a little visual interest. But I want that nice and soft. So to soften an edge, especially if it's still wet, that's the best time to do it. I just place my brush down with a damp but clean brush while everything is still wet, and then I'll take a little bit of color and I'll dab it in here, and that way it'll fade, but it should have a soft edge. Not always. Doesn't always work for me, but in theory that is how it's supposed to work if you were to take a painting class. All right, I love these two. I hate that one still, but it is what it is. I'm going to add kind of some soft, like really background elements right now. Really wet brush, not a lot of pigment. I'm gonna add like another pod over here, just to add kind of some depth and interest. So it's one of those things that if I were to scan this, it might not even show up very well. But if you're just gonna look at it, I guess I'd have to really work at the scan to get it to show up the way I want it to. I think I'm gonna put another right here. Just really lightly. I don't even know if you guys can see that. Just adding a little bit of kind of that depth and dimension. I'm trying to decide if I want to add another flower in the background or not. And every time I kind of go to do it, I chicken out. So I'm gonna say probably not at this point. Okay, so now that we have this kind of placed in, I'm gonna pull out some of this Ultramarine Blue again and just kind of see where I want to place it, if I want to place it anywhere. I like that the pinks are bleeding. I like how this is dark but not super harsh. But I do want to kind of add in a little bit, just something extra with a slightly different color. So I'm going in with kind of a glaze. So it's like a damp brush with a little bit of pigment. And I'm just kind of adding that in here. I think I'm going to do it as a shadow instead. So this is where I reveal the fact that I'm not a loose style watercolor painter, because I'm still adding details over here. I want that one darker. Let's see, Sap Green and Cadmium Red. Okay, I'll pause for questions in just a second. So if you have those, make sure they're in the comment section. Not green enough. A little too dark. And then I'll probably just call this beast done. Kind of hate everything I just did with that stem. Oh well. I kind of want to darken the flower stems just to give them a little bit more presence. I think I was crooked on this guy. Oh well. I liked that pink bleed, so I'm going to bring that back. But just deepen that. Okay, I think I'm going to close her out there because we've already been hanging out for about half an hour. But, whoops. That's what we got for now. Just something a little bit looser. I actually think I'm gonna see how this is like, it's got this pretty fade and then this is very stark. I'm gonna go back in, trying to hold my phone. Just gonna add a little bit on this side. So it now has way more poppies than is realistic, but, or way more petals than is realistic for a poppy. But that's kind of what we're doing. All right, I'm gonna call that good. Last check for questions, let me see. And that is our completed poppy painting. After it dried, you can see those petals that, you know, were added in the background, how it just adds a lot of depth and dimension. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. That first flower I had trouble with, and I honestly think that's because I didn't warm up. And if you've seen my loose watercolor painting tips video, you'll see one of the first things I say is to warm up, and I didn't follow my own advice, and now I regret it. But I hope that you found this tutorial helpful and interesting, and until next time,